Today's talk is God's abundance. I started off with abundance. Do you really want it? That's how the talk started. But then as I was being with it, I recognized that when we hear the word abundance, we often go into that material presence of what abundance is. So I shifted it to God's abundance. And how these processes work is very similar to Michelle. I just was blank. Nothing was coming. And then the idea started coming Thursday night in the middle of the night, and the clarity of the direction of the talk. But then last night I was with it, and I was just like, but there's still the heart of it's missing for me. You know, I got the ideas, but the heart of it was missing. And the heart of it was, what really is God's abundance? What does that really feel like and look like? So I just sat in meditation and I was listening, just asking, what do you really mean by God's abundance? And it was very peaceful, but I wasn't getting anything. So after sitting there for a while, I just said, well, I'll just let it go. It'll come. And so I went to bed, and as soon as I started falling asleep, it came. And it came in the image of a man named Brother Young. Brother Young is a man that I met about 25 years ago. I was in college, and I wanted to understand more about life that I had never experienced. So I volunteered at a halfway home for juvenile delinquents. It was for a home for young boys between 12 and 18 who had committed some sort of crime between burglary and murder. So these were serious crimes, and they were kids who were in between the detention center and going back out into the world. And it was an overwhelming experience, just how to be. I had no idea. I was completely green to an experience like this, and they didn't know what to do with me as I show up. Hello. And so they just said, well, here's one of the young men, and why don't you get to know him and become friends with him? So I got to read his file and talk with him, and it was heart-wrenching. He was in 9th grade, and I felt like I was talking to, emotionally mature-wise, about 6. He was just so innocent and sweet and so clearly lost. And all the things that I had seen on movies before, on the after-school specials, I was here talking to someone who was actually living that life, that, the stories about his mother, she was an addict, and she would be just strung out on a couch for days, not moving, and he was just this boy. He was the only kid trying to figure out how to live in this home and how to function, and of course, that is how he made into his life of crime. And but what was interesting is after we would have these one-on-one discussions where he was so childlike and innocent, and I just wanted to love him like a little boy. The moment we walked out, he was tough and mean. He was with his kids and his boys and the tough guy, the wall, and the nastiness and the disrespect all came up, and I had no idea how to deal with any of that. It was so beyond me. I was extremely green, but it's hard for anybody. This was a house staffed with people who are professionals, and this is a hard group to work with. And I remember talking with the director of the halfway home, and he had a lot of ambition of what he wanted for the halfway home and for his own career. And but with all of the people there was one guy who stood out, and that was Brother Young. And I don't know what he did, but he was able to love those kids, be tough. I mean, everyone was disciplined. The staff was good. They had to be disciplined. But he could be that tough, but at the same time, they knew how deeply he loved them, how he got both of those things, so they didn't feel belittled. They didn't feel like he was talking to them like children. They weren't embarrassed by his love. And it was all sort of wrapped up in one. He didn't separate how he was with them as individuals or how he was with them in the group, and everybody trusted him. All the kids trusted him completely. They trusted him as a brother. His name wasn't Brother, but everyone called him Brother. The kids who left the home would come back and visit him. And it wasn't until years later that I realized he was that way for everyone. The director would turn to him and talk to him about how to do things. I was this young girl from college who knew nothing, and he talked to me, and I realized I felt safe. One reason why I liked him so much is I felt safe and respected and seen, and he would talk to me about all his views about his lifetime of all that he had seen and his views of what it took to help these boys. And I remember I had this moment of watching the Academy Awards while I was working there. And it's just, those moments of clarity, and I just saw all these people winning awards. And I thought, Brother Young, it will never win an award. and he probably will never make very much money. He had no aspirations to climb the ladder. He just wanted to work with the kids. So, and he's very physically, he didn't have a big personality. He didn't walk into a room and everybody looked at him. He was nondescript. He was my height. He was short. There was nothing about him that stood out except for his incredible love. He fills everybody's heart. And I thought, nobody's going to know. He's this incredible celebrity of God. He's God's celebrity, but the world doesn't see him. And so when I was asking, what is God's abundance? That's who God revealed to me, is this incredibly beautiful man who fills my heart with love 25 years later. I've never seen him since. I don't even know his real name to look him up. But all I have to do is think of him, and my heart is full. That, to me, is God's abundance. The other stuff, it's not that money is bad or fame or power or any of that stuff, but it's in service to the fullness of love, the fullness of God's love. And that's what we are here to become. That's why I think we come here on Sunday mornings. That's why we're all doing our spiritual work in whatever way we're doing it, is so we can become that extraordinary transparency of light and of love and of joy and of harmony and creativity and of beauty, to raise our vibrational frequency so that we are actually becoming a place of heaven on earth in our bodies, in form. And that takes work. It doesn't just happen. Paramahansa Yogananda is a spiritual teacher who came over to America in the early 1900s. And the way he likened God was to 100 watts. And he said most people are 10-watt bulbs. And if we experience the fullness of God, we literally physically could not take it. It would be too much. It would destroy our body. Our body could not handle that much energy, that much love, that much beauty, that much harmony. And that reminded me of a minister. I remember sharing the story of how he was always praying to experience God and experiencing God. And then he had this moment. He said, I was sitting at the piano, and I opened up, and there was this incredible love and light, and it was immersing with me, and it was so big, and it was so much. I kept saying, no, it's too much. And he said, I can't believe I was praying for it all that time, and then when I got it, I just couldn't handle it. So the thing that we are learning about God's abundance, what we are here to learn, is that we can catch the concepts, we can be inspired, but it takes the daily showing up, the daily practice, the daily work. Just like anything else. Anything we care about, our natural gifts, takes development. I remember being surprised. My brother George has been a leader all his life. He was captain of the safety patrol, president of his school. He worked when he got out of law school, he worked for Al Gore in the environment department when he was vice president. And then it's like, well, no, that isn't doing it. So he went back and became the director of a watershed in New Jersey, and then went on to Trenton then became director of environment in D.C., and now he's the director of, so it's always leader, right? So whole story of leading. So I was so shocked. I had breakfast with him a year ago, and we're talking about leadership. And he said, yeah, I'm finally learning how to be a leader. And I remember I'm like, you've been a leader your whole life. And he was saying, well, we can have those ideas, and we have our ideals. I think every one of us has our ideals of spirituality, but to actually live it and become it, it's been nothing but work and learning. Maria Montessori says, step out in failure. To me, that's what life is. We're continually expanding and growing and finding those blocks, finding those walls, all those places where we are not spiritual, where we show up and we get angry, where we get jealous, where we don't feel like we have enough, all the stuff that feels unlike God. And those are our growing points. Those are those places, those blocks to become more and more of that transparency. And they don't change without our concerted effort, without our focused work. And so what the intention of the message today is really more about less the inspiration and more about what we need to do to become those spiritual leaders. Like Gandhi spent 20 years in South Africa cultivating and nurturing the nonviolent practice before he ever went to India. And he continued once he got to India. But that was 20 years of rigorous practice. I don't know if any of you have read his book, My Experiments with Truth, his autobiography. He was relentless and meticulous about the work he was doing day in and day out, inwardly and outwardly, before he ever even got to India. So what we want to be when we're talking about being heaven on earth is we're being inspired, is recognize the inspiration is there to keep us going, but we're in this for the long haul. We're in this for the long journey. At least I hope we are. And we're allowed to quit for a while and rest and say, I've had enough, and then come back, because we're infinite beings. But I want to share today, I recognize we've been doing services now for about 2 months, and it occurred to me I've never actually really talked much about what Centers for Spiritual Living is, why I was drawn to it as a minister, and what we have as an organization to offer. So I'd like to share that today, because one of the things that I find challenging in today's world is I think people do want to wake up more than they've ever wanted to wake up before. And we have a cacophony of noise, and I think all the spiritual marketing for me tends to sometimes join that. I don't know if it's because of the world I'm in, but I get so much marketing about take this class, take this workshop, if you have the keys to this and the secrets over here, and there's just so much coming at us all of the time that that's why I haven't said much, because I just thought I don't want to be part of that cacophony, because everyone has the perfect path, and we know they're all perfect, but then what's my path? What am I supposed to go? And it can be overwhelming, and with technology, it's all now, now, now. You can transform your life in 9 weeks. Be a whole other person. Exactly. We got the 9 years. It's 9 weeks now. So I wanted to share a little bit about this path, only to explain, for me, one of its gifts. And for me, one of its gifts is that it anchors us in universal truth principles and yet gives us freedom. So for me personally, I had a love of Jesus the Christ growing up. I went to a Jewish Montessori school, actually, where we learned Hebrew and did all the Hebrew holidays. So I felt an affinity towards Judaism. And then as an adult, when I got my call to ministry, it came in a vision, and it came with Paramahansa Yogananda and Shunryu Suzuki came and told me I was to be a minister. Well, Yogananda is a Hindu, and Shunryu Suzuki is a Zen teacher, master. So I started thinking, well, what am I supposed to be a minister of? You know, there's a lot of different choices here. Oh, yeah, and my family's agnostic and atheist, so... So I really was wide open. There was no walls. And at the time I would get the CDs of Reverend Michael Beckwith, who's a minister at Agape, and he was part of this organization, Centers for Spiritual Living. He has since gone independent, but at the time he was part of Centers for Spiritual Living. And what I learned from as I started taking the classes and why it became the path for my ministry was it taught universal truth principles that you can find in any religion, including secularism, which is not a religion, but if it's true in one place, it has to be true everywhere. So the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living is Ernest Holmes. He talks about it. He didn't have any revelations. He was just learning and trying to understand what are these principles that you can find everywhere in all religions, philosophy, science, because if it's true one place, if it's universal, it has to be true everywhere. So that was his passion, was to articulate principles. And he started an institute, actually. It did not start off as a church or a religious organization. And he taught classes about these universal principles and then asked people to bring those universal principles into whatever their spiritual path is, to apply it. And so that went on for years, and then people started saying, well, we actually would like to go to a Sunday service where you're talking about universal truth principles. And he resisted for a long time, but they were at him, so finally the services started. So the way this organization started actually was around education, was around classes. And from that place, you apply it to your life. And then Sunday services was about everybody just coming together, whatever our path is, and celebrating the oneness and union. So for me, it allowed me to learn universal truth principles, but also practice. After I had the vision with Yogananda, I wanted to find out a little bit about him, so I was doing all his home study classes, learning about Zen. It just allowed me to explore all these different modalities. And for me, that's really important in our day. Look, we're in this beautiful open Lotus Center where we're opening to our enlightened self. Rock and Sheila, it was a great open house yesterday. Woohoo! And we have so many modalities just right here in this one building, and everyone here has their own path. And so it gives a base, but then it allows for us to use all those different modalities to support that path, practicing those principles. So there is an education program where we have classes. And what I also love about the way we do classes, and I did not like it when I first started, which is you can only take one class at a time. So where everything is about fast, speed, get as much information as you can, in Centers for Spiritual Living, you're actually denied that privilege. Take one class, really learn it, really practice those principles, learn them for yourself, apply them. So Michelle's sharing, you're hearing in class every week, how are these principles showing up in my life this week, where are my blocks? And everybody comes together and we start growing together, and you might find a group of people that you start going through classes together, because you're not taking a bunch of classes, you're just taking one after another, and then there's a thing we call practitioner training. And that's to become, if you want, a licensed spiritual counselor. And that's where it's about doing healing/curing work. And one can do that. That requires testing and all of that. But what we will be doing here is anyone can go through the classes all the way through practitioner 2 training. And you can decide if you want to be licensed or not, but to have the personal and spiritual development. It takes if you go straight through from beginning to end, it takes 4 years to go through those classes. And the transformation that happens through those classes and the depth of intimacy that happens with the people that go through the classes with you is eternal and will last forever. It's an incredible gift. The reason why I didn't teach any classes, certificate classes this past fall, though, is because this whole curriculum, I don't even know if I call it a curriculum, path started flowing through me in the past year. And so I couldn't figure out how the two work together. And I didn't know if there was either or should I do them simultaneously. And what has totally come clear to me is that it actually is a ministerial program. Because 4 years seems like a long time, but actually it's very short on this whole spiritual path. So once you've done 4 years in Centers for Spiritual Living, a lot of people stop taking classes, they stop having that joy of being in classes, or they go on to ministerial school. And what's interesting about ministerial school is that it's really geared towards pulpit ministry, and yet 40% of our last graduates are all doing non-pulpit ministry, because people want to go out and serve, but they don't necessarily want to do a pulpit. And so the program and the path that's been coming through me is also a 4-year path, and it ends with your ordination, where you get to invite family and friends, and that's how you go out publicly to the world, how you'll be serving in the world. And then actually even after that, now you're on the public serving, there's 4 more years after that. So the whole program that's come through is like 12 years if you did it from beginning to end, but you could take a lifetime. There's no hurry because we're not in any race. But the idea is creating a structure for us to continually have the context to do all this spiritual work and say, I'm in this for the long haul. I'm here. So the question I came up that kept coming up about was spiritual abundance. Do we really want it? Because what I've noticed is that people get really excited and then pull back and start doing something else. If they don't get immediate manifestation, or if they don't get the transformation isn't happening quickly, they lose interest and start going places. So the invitation to us at this point, and what I invite us to do all this week, is there's so much coming at us, the cacophony of the world that we live in today, is to actually pull away from all the stuff coming at us and saying, what is my commitment? What do I really want? Not just in the next year, not just in the next 5 years, but for my life. One of the practices we actually do in practitioner training is creating our own memorial service, and we write our own eulogy to say, what do we really want from my life? Who do I really want to become, and how committed am I? Am I in it for the long haul? Am I in it when things get really tough? Am I willing to show up? Am I willing to show up to my own spiritual growth when things are hard for the people closest to me? Can I still show up? When things are really great, do I just sort of dismiss it because now things are great, I don't need it anymore? All the various aspects of life that come and go, how deeply committed, how much do I really want God's abundance? How much do I really want to experience this oceanic love, this power, this joy, this freedom, this creativity, this abundance, this beauty, this harmony, this extraordinary bliss that God is? How much do I really want it? And am I willing to give myself day in and day out, not only month after month, but year after year after year? That's our invitation, is God's abundance. Do we really want it? And what is my path? I know some of you already are fully on the path already. It's not about one path versus another path. It's saying, how committed am I, and do I know my path, and do I really want to be this, and is this the most important part of my life? And can I show up for that for myself and for other people? God's abundance, do we really want it? Do you really want it? And so so Sunday mornings, whether you take the classes or not, Sunday mornings are for whatever your path is. We all get to hear each other's stories and get to know each other who are committed to the path, who are committed to waking up, because we need the support. We need to know there's other people out there who are inspiring us. It's one thing to get internet connection. I've made all sorts of connections on the internet, but it's not the same thing as getting that support physically, emotionally, mentally, in person. So thank you for being here.